I'm 28 now, and this happened a couple of years back. It was just a few days before Christmas. I had taken the whole week off from going into the office physically. At my job, we could pretty much choose our in-person days as long as our required hours and deadlines were handled, and I had saved enough remote days to spend this entire week working from home. A heavy winter storm had been forecast for this week, and with the holidays coming up, I wanted my days to be quiet and relaxed. Our company's stance on remote work was simple. Just finish your tasks on time. How you manage your schedule was mostly your own business. There were a few extra guidelines, but overall, it meant I could set my own hours. I always preferred sleeping late and working into the night, so that day, I didn't start working until around noon. The first few hours were calm. I sipped on coffee, tried to focus, and listened to the wind as it gradually picked up strength, rattling the window beside me. By around 3 or 4, the sky was already completely dim from the thick storm clouds and the fast-falling snow. I had planned to drive out and grab dinner, but looking at the roads, I decided I wasn't going anywhere. I stayed at my desk for a couple more hours. The sun had set. The storm was fully raging, and I kept the blinds open just to watch the snow piling up. That's when something odd happened. A small flicker of light outside. A narrow beam of light drifting across the snow. Clearly, a flashlight. I leaned back in my chair and watched it for a few seconds. After about 10 seconds, curiosity got the better of me. I stood up and walked to the window. It was freezing out there. Why would anyone be outside? I looked down the side of my house and spotted the light again, but before I could trace it back to whoever was holding it, the light vanished, either switched off or blocked by something. With the storm blowing so heavily, my view was nearly useless. I assumed maybe a neighbor lost something or was checking on their yard. I sat back down and tried to keep working. Over the next couple of hours, the house kept making those classic winter noises, creaks. Little groans, but every so often, I'd hear something sharper, louder. Enough to make me stop typing and listen. I kept convincing myself it was just the house settling, until one sound wasn't like the others. A loud thud, more like something breaking. Definitely not wind, and definitely inside. I got up, walked into the hallway, then downstairs. Everything looked normal. I didn't hear anything else except the roar of the storm outside. Honestly, I wasn't freaked out enough to do a full sweep of the house, so I decided to head back upstairs. I was just a few steps from reaching the top when suddenly, click, the entire house went black. Power gone. I froze. With the blizzard blocking any outdoor light, the house felt like a cave. I couldn't see my own fingers. I figured the storm knocked something out, or maybe the breaker tripped, so I carefully felt my way back downstairs, step by step. The breaker box was in the basement, so I began walking toward the basement door, sliding my hand along the wall to stay oriented. Halfway there, I heard something. A muffled movement, coming from behind the basement door. It got closer, and then slowly, the basement door creaked open. My stomach dropped. I stepped backward and slipped into the open bathroom right beside me. I didn't dare close the door. The sound would have given me away. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. Getting closer. I held my breath. The footsteps passed right by the open doorway. Someone walked within 2 or 3 feet of me, and I saw absolutely nothing. That's how dark it was. The steps faded toward the stairs. Once they reached the carpet, the sound disappeared entirely. With only the wind outside filling the silence, I realized the person could still be standing right at the bottom of the stairs, or they could be heading up toward my office. I took the chance that they kept moving upward. I slipped out of the bathroom, feeling my way to the garage door. I grabbed my keys, ran out the side entrance, and reached my car in the driveway. I got in, drove off, and used the SOS system to call the police. By the time they arrived, The intruder was gone. What they did find was horrifying. The power box had been manually shut off, and footprints led directly to my office, and then my bedroom. Nowhere else. Whoever this was wasn't randomly exploring. They were looking specifically for me. What scared me most was that they moved through my pitch-black home like they already knew where everything was. Like they knew my layout, my routine, maybe even me personally. After that night, I moved. And for months, I was paranoid around anyone I wasn't close to. Thankfully, nothing else has happened. I hope I never have an update to give you. Second story, I had been driving since early morning, trying to make it from Minneapolis to my sister's place in Montana before the weekend. It was supposed to be a short winter road trip. Just me, my old Subaru, and gas station coffee. Things were smooth until the snow started falling once I got deeper into the isolated parts of the highway. It started light, but quickly built into a white wall my headlights could barely cut through. After an hour, the road was buried, and I couldn't tell where the lanes were anymore. I decided I'd pull into the very next place I saw and wait the storm out. About 15 minutes later, I spotted a faint glowing sign through the snow. I turned into a tiny parking lot with 3 cars, one practically buried and 2 that looked like they just arrived. It wasn't a motel, just a little roadside cafe. I went inside. It felt like stepping into a place frozen in time. 2 men sat quietly at the counter with coffee, and a woman worked behind the bar. The moment I walked in, all 3 turned toward me and greeted me a little too quickly, actually. Like I interrupted something. I ordered coffee and sat by the front window, watching the snow swallow our cars. One of the men looked half dead, pale, unfocused, maybe exhausted, or maybe something else entirely. After a few minutes of total silence, one of the guys muttered something about trying to make it to his cabin before the roads closed. Then he walked out to his car. A minute later, the second guy stood up without saying a word and left as well. I moved back to the counter and asked the woman what was going on. She said they'd come in together and looked like they were arguing before entering. Maybe road rage, she guessed. We talked for about half an hour. No one else came in. Eventually, I walked back to the window, and something was wrong. Both men's cars were still there, but neither man was inside or outside. They had simply vanished. I stepped outside to look around. The cold hit me instantly. No footprints, no movement, nothing except the wind. Something felt seriously wrong, and I decided to warm up my car to leave. But when I tried turning the key, nothing. Not even a weak attempt. Completely dead. It had been fine when I parked. That's when I saw movement. One of the men emerging from the woods behind the cafe. Just a dark silhouette pushing through the snow. I ran inside, locked the door, and told the woman to call 911. She hesitated, but made the call. A minute later, the man reached the front door and tried to push it open. When he realized it was locked, he stared straight at me through the glass. Bloodshot eyes, pale skin, expression empty. After a few seconds, he ran to his car. By the time police arrived, only 3 cars remained. Mine, the woman's, and one of the men's. The other man, the one who first left, was missing. The officers searched the woods and found his body. His belongings weren't taken. It was just an act of violence. His car, like mine, had its ignition line cut. It was clear what had happened. The creepy man tampered with both cars, waited, and followed the first victim out into the dark woods. And just like that, it happened right outside the cafe while we were inside drinking coffee. And he had cut my line, too. He likely planned to wait for me next. I eventually made it to my sister's place, but I never heard anything about the man getting caught. I don't think I'll ever drive long distances in a winter storm again. The image of him walking out of the woods toward me, now knowing what his intentions actually were, still makes my chest tighten. Third story. This happened around the Christmas holidays last year, somewhere between Christmas and New Year's. I was back in my hometown for winter break from college. Even though I was home, I still had bills to take care of. So whenever I wasn't busy with family, I picked up DoorDash shifts. It was snowing that night, but not so heavily that driving became dangerous. Just enough that most people didn't want to go out. Nights like that were perfect for deliveries, since demand shot up. Everything was normal until about 10 p.m. Things slowed down, but I was still getting steady orders. One came in that was a bit farther than usual, around 20 minutes out. My hometown is tiny, but very spread out, so a lot of houses sit deep in wooded areas. When I got close to the pin on the app, something immediately felt off. The direction led me off the main road onto a narrow forest path. Eventually, I reached a spot where what looked like a gravel driveway should have been, but it was completely buried under snow. No tire marks, no lights, no hint of a house anywhere. Just trees. I stayed inside my car and called the customer, thinking maybe the app glitched. He answered instantly. He sounded like a man in his mid-30s, with a rough smoker's voice, deep and raspy. I told him I was at the pinned location, but didn't see a driveway or any house. He replied in this annoyed tone, like it should have been obvious. Said the snow probably covered everything in the driveway. Is there? Somewhere. I explained I wasn't comfortable driving my car into that much unplowed snow. He snapped back with something rude like, "Well, that's why I ordered delivery. If you're not going to bring it up, what's the point?" I remember thinking how unnecessary his attitude was. But at the time, I didn't want him to cancel the order or leave a bad rating, especially after driving all the way out there. Later, I checked the rules. Turns out if a driveway isn't accessible, the customer is responsible, not the driver. But back then, I didn't know that. So after he hung up, I grabbed the order, got out, locked my car, and started walking into the snow. The snow wasn't extremely deep, but the ground underneath was uneven, and if I had driven, my car definitely would have gotten stuck. Without any lights ahead, it was really hard to tell where the actual path was. I could only guess based on where the trees looked slightly more spaced out. Every few steps, I looked back at my car, the only visible reference point. Ahead of me, everything looked the same. Dark trees and endless white. Then I heard it. A faint crunching sound to my left, like a boot stepping into snow. So subtle that I thought I imagined it. I turned my phone's light on, but the beam barely reached a few feet in front of me. Nothing. No movement. No sound. Just the wind. I tried to brush it off and kept walking. But the deeper I got, the colder it became, and the more wrong everything felt. At some point, it hit me. I should have at least seen a porch light, a roof line, something to tell me I was getting closer. But all I could see was darkness. That's when the realization finally clicked in my mind. What if there is no house? What if someone deliberately sent me out here? Standing alone in the dark woods, holding that food bag, I felt a wave of fear wash over me. I stopped, pulled my phone back out, and decided, if the customer didn't explain himself properly this time, I was leaving. I dialed him. It rang twice. Then, in my peripheral vision, I saw a small light flicker between the trees. Far away. A dim glow. And then suddenly, it shut off. At that exact moment, the call dropped. I didn't think. I didn't breathe. I just turned around and started sprinting back the way I came. Running through snow in total darkness was the most terrifying thing I've done. My footsteps were so loud they drowned out everything. I couldn't tell if someone was behind me or not. That uncertainty made it worse. When my car came back into view, I almost cried out of relief. But then I froze. Something was wrong. The car was leaning slightly. One of the tires was completely flat. He had slashed it. I didn't stop to think. I jumped inside anyway, started the engine, and forced my car forward. I didn't care if the rim got damaged. I just wanted out. As soon as I got back onto the main road, I called the police. They listened, asked a few questions, and honestly didn't seem to take it that seriously. But to me, the situation was clear. The guy lured me out there intentionally. He flattened my tire so I couldn't leave. He was waiting in those woods with a flashlight, and he was close, way too close. I don't know what would have happened if I had walked a little further, and I really don't want to imagine it.